What is up, folks? Today I'm going to be showing you how Cameron managed to make this transformation above me, getting leaner, putting on a significant amount of muscle mass and strength in 4 months. But more importantly, he completely transformed his energy, his productivity, even his sleep through nutrition, and just in general, his quality of life has improved so much. Now, the reason I've chosen Cameron specifically for this video, not only is it a very impressive transformation, but he's a perfect example of fitness is about making the most of what you have, not just doing the absolute physical most you could. It's not about volume, it's how you're what you're making of that volume. For Cameron, he runs a six-figure business, he's working on a schedule, fitting what we can within that schedule so he still has time to himself, so the plan is still nutrition wise still sustainable, he can stick to it for a long period of time but still get results. That's what fitness is about, especially if you're like Cameron, a young professional. That's what it's all about. Now, to set the scene on Cameron a little bit, so he runs a six-figure business, but it's in construction. So it's very, very physical. From memory, obviously we text a lot. He's a client of mine. I believe there's been days where he's lugging like 80-kilo metal poles. That's going to impact his recovery. It's going to impact his training. And that is something that we need to work around. Equally, he's on site most days. He's got early mornings. Those are things that we need to work around as well. Equally, because he's running a business, his construction, his schedule's changing week to week. Now, even though I believe his work hours are around like 60 hours a week, I mean, depending, um, the physicality of his work isn't the same every week. There are some weeks where it's tame. There are some weeks where it's really full on. There are some weeks where the hours are longer. There are some weeks where it's not as long. And for Cameron, he had a lot of training experience previously, even though he might not have seen the results he wanted. But now he was just struggling with staying consistent. One of the reasons he could build such a substantial amount of muscle mass in a short time was partly because of muscle memory, but also because we finally gave him the structure that he needed. Because for Cameron, he did kind of know what he needed to do, but life just kept on getting in the way. He wasn't managing to stay consistent. He wasn't being able to hold himself accountable, but he also didn't really have a structure that would have allowed him to do that anyway. And here's what this brings me to the next thing. Because his problem wasn't necessarily effort. Now, I will say, if you want something badly enough, you're going to get it no matter what. So, but that being said, previously, he went at his training just going when he could, assuming his schedule would allow it, which is unrealistic. I've been speaking to a couple people this week who are starting businesses alongside their 9 to 5s, their corporate work, and just saying, I'll train when I can. But that's just not going to work because I promise you, having been a business owner, I built my coaching business while I still worked in corporate. It's going to always fall down the cracks. You're just not going to prioritize it. But if you have a structure that's going to work, regardless what your schedule looks like, I was doing 100 hours a week of work when I was balancing those two things. You're going to stay consistent because you know the times you're training, you know your work hours, you know the amount of time you can spend on your business. You need something that's number one, flexible. So if something does get thrown at you, your plan still works. But number two, that is going to work no matter what. Secondly, his nutrition was number one, not built or optimized for his energy levels. There were loads of gaps in his micronutrients. His carb intake wasn't really optimized or timed well around his work. Now, I wouldn't say these are like really complicated things, but they make a huge difference. And we're going to go deeper into how it works later and how you can apply it for yourself too. Um, but this final thing as well was we made meals which were number one, enjoyable, but number two, easy to make, easy to batch cook, which meant he could stay consistent, he could adhere to the diet and enjoy all of it. Now, of course, we spoke about it already, touched on it on that last slide. His job's very physical. That made a difference in the programming. Also made a difference. Sleep was so key. And one of the things that he lacked before coming to me was he was getting around 5 or 6 hours of sleep a night, I believe, from memory. And now he's getting 8 hours consistently. The sleep quality has skyrocketed, and there's steps we've obviously taken to make that happen. Now, first of all, we've spoken a lot about training on that last slide. Now, for him, as I said, he's working around 60 hours a week. Not every single week looks the same. Now, what I recommend to people normally, and I did the same with Cameron to begin with, is you want a set structure on what your training is going to look like week to week so you can build the rest of your life around it. Now, so for him, that started off as training an upper lower split 4 times a week. But this is what a lot of people don't know. Training isn't just saying, oh, I go to the gym 4 times, 5 times, 6 times a week. That's not what it's about. There are 3 things which matter for muscle growth. Number 1 is the amount of volume you're doing, how many sets you're doing for each muscle group per week. If you're somewhere in the realm of 4 and 10 sets per muscle group per week, you'll be totally fine. Number 2 is intensity. Are you training close to failure? Are each of those 4 to 10 sets per muscle group per week going within 0 or 1 reps in reserve? Reps in reserve means how many reps until you fail. And number 3 is frequency. How many times you're training a muscle each week. Now, that's where the important thing is. Whether you're training 4, 5, 6 days a week doesn't matter. What matters is each muscle group is getting hit twice. Now, if he's doing an upper-lower split, he's training upper twice, he's training lower twice. That's each muscle group hit twice. If he's doing full body and upper-lower, he's doing a full body, every muscle group's hit once, then an upper and a lower, each muscle group's now hit twice. The same way. If he did full body twice, each muscle group, is now hit twice. That's what matters. So we built out a flexible option for him because we started realizing right now he came out of some personal issues which made business even more busy for him. Hence why we built out this flexible option and we planned weeks ahead. We knew the days he was going to train, but some days it might have been 2 or 3 or 4. That's what changed. What didn't change is he was still doing those 4 to 10 sets per muscle group per week. For him, it was the lower end, 4 sets, because it made it easier to recover for him around work, that lower volume. We kept the intensity high. Him and I had a conversation about this the other day. He's made incredible progress, and I posted a reel about it on Instagram, and he literally responded saying, it's actually crazy the amount of progress you can make when you train hard. I think that's why most people don't build as much muscle as obviously he has in this period, but just in general. And he's totally right. Most people do not put as much into their training as I could. And this goes back to the whole making the most of what you have. Yes, Cameron, there's been weeks where he's gone to the gym twice. And his workouts, his upper and lower workouts are around 45 minutes. His full body workouts are between an hour and a half. He's doing 4 sets for each muscle group per week. And he still made that ridiculous transformation in 4 months. Because each set is going so close to failure. He's using brilliant form. He's going heavy. He's hitting failure in that 4 to 8 rep range is the rep range that I've assigned him. And he's working on progressive overloading. And the result of that, first of all, the 2 times frequency, but keeping that intensity there, is he's seeing consistent progress, even for the crazy weeks. And this is how you're going to dial in your intensity. This is the thing which changed the game for him. Is, let's say you were doing a machine chest fly, a pec deck. Now, you did 22.5 kilos for 6 reps last week. Next session, next time you're doing pec deck, you go into that session knowing you want to get a 7th rep, not 6 reps, 7. Now, once you get that 7th rep, you're going into the gym for that next time you're doing it, beating what you got last time. Now you're going for an 8th rep. Now you've hit that 8th rep, you go back to the bottom of the rep range and increase the weight from 22.5 to 25. Now go back up from 4 to 8, and once you get to 8, you go to 27.5, and so on and so forth. And that's exactly what progressive overload is. Now, what we're going to do is you're going to track your lifts. You're going to track what you're doing each session, the weight and your reps, and you're going to follow that process. And that's how you're going to keep yourself intense, because you're going to go into the gym knowing those targets you have, and you're thinking of this as an opportunity to be better than what you were last time. And all that's important with this is you keep yourself strict. The form is going to look the same every week. We want you to be progressing because you're getting stronger, not because you're just having worse and worse form. Now, the reason this principle works, especially with the flexible program, is I've heard a lot of people saying they'll train 5 times a week, 6 times a week, and then they just stop training because they're like, oh, well, I can't train 5 or 6 times a week. May not just go at all. That's the exact problem. And instead, if you've got this flexibility of saying, first of all, 4 times a week is probably going to work every week. But if you're on site for a couple extra hours, you've been lugging 80 kilo poles all day, that's okay. We'll let you recover and we can do a full body day. So that way you're training 3 times instead of 4 times. That's the flexibility you need. And it's all about, as I said, with that whole little rant about progressive overload and intensity, it's about quality over quantity. We care more about getting the most out of each set than doing more sets. you're going to get more out of 4 really intense, really dialed in, tracked sets a week than 10 sets a week. And even with me, I've made the most progress personally in terms of muscle growth while doing volume that low, purely not because it's better scientifically. It's not. If you do 8 sets with that intensity instead of 4, most of the time it's going to be better. I mean, it depends on the person, I suppose. But it's because doing volume that low allowed me to focus on that intensity, because that is the biggest needle mover. But moving on. Now, in terms of nutrition, and this is, I think, the biggest game changer for Cameron, is we first of all increase his carb intake. Because his job's quite active, he has the freedom to have a relatively large amount of calories, even though he was getting leaner. Now, within that, what we did is he had, I believe, protein intake wise, and this is me talking for you specifically watching this video, you want 0.8 to 1 grams per pound of your body weight, or if you're a bit overweight, a healthy target body weight. For Cameron, I believe we were around 0.9 grams per pound of his body weight. He weighs around 70 kilos, and that weight has stayed pretty similar throughout because we did a recomp, which just means you're losing fat and building muscle at the same time. And I believe his protein intake was 130 to 140 grams. So around that 0.9 to 1 gram per pound mark. Obviously, I know I'm mixing pound and kilos, but my bad. It's not that deep. Now, within that, so that's the amount of protein he's having. For fats, you want to go 0.25 to 0.3 grams per pound of his body weight. Just around there. I believe he was having like 60-ish grams of fat. Can't remember off the top of my head. But the most important thing is the rest of those calories were going to carbs. Now, on a training day, this is why we've got a training day on the left and a non-training day on the right. On a training day, he's having a pre-workout meal. So he takes his pre-workout meal to work and he's going straight from work to the gym. It helps him stay consistent. That pre-workout meal consists of around 60 to 70 grams of quick absorbing carbs. Why 60 to 70 grams? You want somewhere around like 0.5 to 1 gram per kilo of body weight in quick absorbing carbs before you go and train. And you want to let that digest for around an hour. But let's just say 1 minute per gram of carbs you have. It's not really that deep. You won't mess it up if you follow those rough guidelines. It's not like that big of a deal. And those carbs will make a huge difference for your training pre-workout. I'm not going to cover the sciencey stuff about this. I'm sure I've made an Instagram video about it in the past. You can watch it if you follow me. But those simple carbs are before his workout, and he's also having some in his meal after his workout. Again, that's really helpful for his training performance and his recovery. But the rest of the day, we're worrying about complex carbs. We're prioritizing complex carbs. Things like potatoes, like oats. Like for him, one of the biggest game changers for his energy were oats in the morning. Overnight oats. They're easy to meal prep. They taste good. And for him, a huge game changer for his energy. But here's something unique for Cameron is he had a shake at lunch. And the reason this is unique is he's big on productivity. He wants to work all the way through the day. Now, but we still want to make sure every single micronutrient has been hit. He's having carbs to make sure he stays energized. He's staying full. He hits his protein, his healthy fats. So we literally just replaced a meal with a shake. Instead of having cold, hard foods, just blend it up. A complex carb source, a protein source, a healthy fat source, and put it into a shake. So he could stay productive. But like I said, that's pretty specific for him working in construction and just wanting to get more work done. But the only real difference for the non-training day is that pre-workout meal isn't there and the post-workout meal isn't there either. Instead, because his post-workout meal is just a dinner, right? Instead, the post-workout meal would have a complex carb in rather than a simple carb. But on both the training day and the non-training day, the meals are very simple. I gave him a bank of recipes which would work, as well as like a template to work off of, obviously within the meal plan, and integrated his favorite foods and drinks in there. For him, he loved this thing called ice breaks. I think it's this big like drink in Australia. He's Australian, by the way. We integrated that within his plan, within moderation, helps him stay consistent, build positive habits around that. So to summarize his nutrition, we made sure every single micronutrient had been hit. So for him, that was 2 servings of fruit and veg in each meal, but you choosing specific ones to hit micronutrients. literally manually tracked it out and made sure every single one has been hit. That's made a huge difference for his energy and his sleep. Secondly, complex carbs during the day, prioritizing them has made a huge difference for his energy. Oats in the morning, whole grain carb sources, potatoes, things like that at lunch, and obviously you anchoring a lean protein source in each meal, and then keeping simple carbs around his workout and a healthy fat source in each meal as well to make sure his hormones are all good. That pretty much summarizes how he managed. We saw such a crazy increase in his energy. Now, this is what I think too many people ignore. So, in regards to his sleep, we focus a lot on building out a routine because, as I said earlier on, when he came to me, was getting around 5 or 6 hours of sleep a night, but now it's around 8, purely because he actually has a structure rather than just doing things when things make sense. He has a routine to wind down that hour before he goes to bed. He's not doing admin work. He's not on his phone. He's not eating. He's winding down so his sleep quality is higher. He isn't having caffeine before he goes to bed. Obviously, he's not on screens before he goes to bed. He's not eating before he goes to bed. His caffeine intake, around 8 hours before bed, no more caffeine. An hour before bed, no more screens. Around 3 hours before bed, that's his last proper meal. So all those things have had a huge impact on his sleep. Now, the second was the energy, the physical job. In making sure that made sure that he was recovering from the gym with working programming around his work. That was important. We made sure he could recover through the nutrition, through the programming, but also the productivity. The fact he was sleeping better, the fact that his nutrition was so dialed in, because like I said, every single micronutrient hit, structuring the carbs the way I said, all of that means you're not going to be having brain fog, you're not having mental fatigue, you're getting out of bed with energy, you're having energy all the way throughout the day. I just realized I've submitted these things down here, but I can't really be bothered to now. It's fine. But anyway, I can't remember where I was. All of that matters to be productive. So the nutrition and also the training. When you're training, when you're basically doing that physical activity, you're having goals outside of your work. That makes a humongous difference. And I think, to be honest, that's probably impacted all three things here. Now, hence why, after going through all that, this photo is distorted, having built out the training plan, which works for him, the sleep schedule, which means he's getting that improved sleep and the improved sleep quality, and having built out that nutrition system, which means he's having energy all the time, his workouts, he's performing well in them, he's recovering well from them. He's built a significant amount of muscle mass. He's visibly leaner. He's got a vein in his shoulder, a vein in his bicep. And the whole time, especially recently, he's training 2 to 4 days a week. And we never overhauled his lifestyle. He always had time to himself to do hobbies, to see his family. And we have seen significant improvements in his energy. But I want to also stress, this isn't a blueprint which is a one-size-fits-all. Like I said, with the nutrition, it was built specifically for him. Those shakes were so he could work throughout his lunch break. That's not for you to do. But the general principles of fitting as much in to what you can, making the most of what you have, that's the principle I want you to work by. The principles stand, but you need to adapt that to your situation. That's exactly what we did with Cameron and how he got the results that he did. The difference between just watching this and actually getting similar results to Cameron is the accountability of actually staying consistent and doing it. It doesn't matter how perfect your plan is. If you stay at home, sit down and do niche, you have to actually do it, even if it's not crazy full on. Something has to be sacrificed because you have sacrificed results for the lifestyle you have now. You're going to have to sacrifice part of the lifestyle you have now to get results. That's the reality. But secondly, the personalization. Adapting all these principles that I've gone over with the nutrition, hitting the micronutrients, the carb structure, the sleep schedule, the training schedule, with all of that needs to be adapted to your situation, personalized. It's just a framework which gets adapted and making adjustments based on what you're seeing week to week. If I should have actually got screenshots of his check-ins in here, I was meant to do that, but I just wanted to get this video out because I think it would be really helpful for a lot of people to see how he did this. So my bad. But yeah, making adjustments weekly. We've seen that oats make a crazy difference for his energy. Obviously, that's going to stay in his meal plan. If I saw that he was having those oats and he felt like his energy, he was a bit sluggish, we probably wouldn't keep that in the plan. If we saw his weight was drastically increasing, drastically decreasing, when we weren't meant to see those things happen, we would adjust and make sure things are going to plan. It's why data is important. Whether you're tracking food or not, I think you should track food. For Cameron, he doesn't track his food, but that's also because he follows what I tell him to a T. I have some clients who track their food and use it as a model. It depends on the client. Because, yeah, I mean, I'm not pitching you something now, but my program's not a one size fits all ordeal, you know? But for Cameron, he followed it to a T. He knew what we was eating. I knew what was going into his mouth. I know how his body weight should be moving. So we could adjust based on that. Now, as I said, the meat of this is adapting the principles to your life, to your situation. Now, if you want me to do that for you, and so you can get results similar to this, and I mean, I've gotten numerous other results. You can see it all over my Instagram. You can either DM me the word change on Instagram, obviously at Max Coaching. Chances are you came from Instagram watching this video anyway. Or you can literally book a call directly with me for coaching below and just pick something that aligns with your schedule. Obviously, it will align with mine as well. And we can get you on the way to the results that you deserve. Either way, I really hope this video helped you out. And yeah, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. But let me know any feedback in the comments and I'll catch you later. Take care.